A 3-year-old Chinese boy is shaking up global movie markets, and you've probably heard of him. Yes, his name is Ne Zha. Say it with me, Ne Zha. I know it's difficult to pronounce, but it's possible. It's a mythical character from the Chinese novel Fengshen Yanyi, the investiture of the gods. The movie debuted at the end of January in China's mainland during the Spring Festival holiday and quickly shattered box office records at home and abroad. Within 3 weeks, it has grossed nearly 13 billion yuan or 1.8 billion US dollars, making it the world's best-selling animated movie in history. It's also the only non-Hollywood movie to join the all-time global box office top 10. So what has made this movie such a success? And with its release in Western markets such as the US, Australia and New Zealand, could this be a turning point for China's cultural appeal in the world? Welcome to The Point with me, Liu Xin, coming to you live from Beijing. I'm pleased to be joined from Ningbo in East China's Zhejiang province by Thomas William Whyke, Assistant Professor in Culture and Media Studies at the University of Nottingham, Ningbo, China. From Hong Kong SAR by Bernard Chan, Chairman of Kwun Culture and Arts Company Limited and Vice Chairman of West Kowloon Cultural District Authority. And from Los Angeles, California by Teng Jimeng, former Professor of Chinese Film in the SET program at Capital Normal University. He's also a Senior Research Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization, a Beijing-based influential think tank. Gentlemen, such a pleasure to have all of you and welcome to The Point. But for those who haven't seen the movie, sorry for the spoiler, skip the next 30 seconds if you want. Ne Zha 2 is the second installment of a mythical child warrior, a rebellious deity who battles demons. It's a happy ending. It's humor and action-packed, complete with stunning CGI and a gripping storyline. It was 5 years in the making, and it was well worth it. As we speak, it has made history, now ranking 8th on all-time global box office sales. After making a splash on the Chinese mainland, it's debuted in North America, Oceania. It's also planning to be released in Asian countries such as Singapore, Malaysia, Pakistan, Japan, and African countries. Now, the international reviews have been excellent. 8.3 by IMDb, 99% by Rotten Tomatoes, a big film critic website. IMDb says it's lightning striking twice with Ne Zha 2, a sequel that surpasses its predecessor in both narrative ambition and visual grandeur. Right now, the film ranks 8th on the global top 10 selling films, according to an influential Chinese platform. And it's not over yet. Some expect the final box office number to reach 16 billion yuan or 2 billion US dollars. So let me go to Professor Whyke first. What's your estimate? First of all, do you have a number? And what's behind Ne Zha's amazing instant success?
Yeah, I think it will continue to grow, the success both domestically and abroad. As I said in a paper about the first movie, I think what these films are able to do now is maintain that impressive 3D CG visuals. They're showing also a lot of narratively developed elements as well, like the family dynamics, etc. And I think that that's a notable strength. And I think particularly with this movie, the second one, it also makes a lot of intertextual reference to the past. So the 1979 classic Ne Zha Conquers the Dragon King. So I think, yeah, this will certainly continue to grow domestically and abroad.
Bernard, you must have been following the news very much, although it has yet to debut in cinemas in Hong Kong. How do you look at the success so far, the stunning instant fame of this film so far?
Well, I watched the Ne Zha 1, and Ne Zha 2 will be debuted tomorrow in Hong Kong. And I can't, we're all looking forward to it, because especially for those who have watched the first one, and we're already so amazed with these so-called the cutting-edge graphic, the animation. It's just amazing. So I just can't imagine what Ne Zha 2 is going to be like. So I think the success of this movie is how we somehow, at least for the Asian audience for sure, is how we combine this 16th century old Chinese culture with technology. That perfect is that this so-called sci-fi movie is so popular, increasingly very popular among the young audience as well as even people like myself. So I think it's amazingly how we have achieved with technology, combining technology with traditional old same old movies, right? So I think that's what excites people about.
We'll get more into that for sure. Professor Teng, from your perspective, I know every time we talk about these kind of topics, cultural essence is a very big element. So besides the dazzling visuals, the action, do you think the Eastern cultural essence also gave it an additional appeal and depth this time? If you will, give us an example.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I think superhero films are always appealing to wide populations around the world and to each of these different demographics, let's say this. And so culturally, I think a film like Ne Zha actually has been so very much kind of appealing, not just to domestic audiences who are familiar with the stories based on that very Ming novel, but at the same time, I mean, the themes, I think this animated film features actually would reach out to not just Chinese diasporas in the Southeast Asia, but also Chinese people in North America, and also people who are influenced by Chinese culture, starting from.
Would you give us an example? Because you watched this movie 3 times, I understand, in China on the mainland and in Los Angeles, for instance. Where did the audience, the moviegoers in Los Angeles, erupt the loudest laughter for? I mean, what resonated with them the most, if you can recall?
Yeah, I mean, it's first thing first. It's a funny film. It's a very funny film. I mean, Ne Zha looks funny, and he's mischievous. He fights a lot, and he fights with Chinese kung fu, and people actually love Chinese kung fu. So the character is kind of a very emblematic of this essence of Chinese culture, which has been actually widely popular in North America and around in the world in general. Secondly, the humor. I mean, Ne Zha is a very humorous character. I mean, the guy actually has a lot of these famous lines out there. I mean, fighting, that's what I'm so good at. Or this is also a character who is very much kind of into philosophy, the kind of a Chinese philosophy, Taoism, Buddhism. For example, one of the iconic line is 我命由我不由天. And that's very, very kind of appealing and grappling with, attractive to an audience in North America, and is well translated this time around. I was particularly interested in the subtitles translated and demonstrated on the big screen. And it actually expresses the very essence of it.
Yeah, it's an art in itself, isn't it? I mean, for people who work in cross-cultural communication, we're all fascinated by the subtitles. But I want to go back to Professor Whyke here for that particular point, the cultural elements, because just now you talk about, predicting that more people, a wider audience and wider success. But what you find as a Westerner that's appealing to you, that you can understand and relate to the most?
Yeah, I think the film does have several universal themes. I think family is probably the one that really hits home with audiences abroad as well as domestically. The scenes with Ne Zha and his mother, for instance, when they separate, and of course when his mother passes away at the end, I think they're very emotional. And if we look at some of the key words that people are using in the reviews online, that idea of, that this resonates with all audiences from young to middle-aged to old. So I think it does have that universal appeal in some of these themes like family, also friendship, things that really resonate on a global scale, I think.
Despite the success of Ne Zha 1, just now Bernard mentioned you watched Ne Zha 1. Despite the success of Ne Zha 1, which came out 5 years ago and also performed extremely well, the Chinese team, led by director Yang Yu, or by the nickname Jiaozi, which means dumpling in Chinese, he actually said he was met with condescension and arrogance in working with big Western names. Let's hear what he had to say on national television just recently.
我们本来呢也是寄望于能够找到一些国际
Initially, we hoped to find some international production teams to help us with the key shots. But after outsourcing, we realized the results weren't as expected.
因为哪怕我们找到一些顶级的视效制作团队
Even when we found top-tier visual effects teams, there was still an underlying sense of arrogance and prejudice because this is a Chinese project. The view was that they may be a top-tier studio, but they could still use third-rate staff to handle our project.
可能也用三流的人员来完成我们的项目，最后还是收回来。
In the end, we decided to bring it back in-house and let our domestic teams do the work, which is when we finally got the best results.
更好的效果。
Right. When I heard this episode on social media, I was really struck what he had to go through. Bernard, what do you make of his comments and the kind of quagmire or struggle Chinese creators are faced with when they're working with international counterparts? They got, third-tier animators working on the project.
Well, I think it's sad to say that it is true that I think not just the film industry, auto industry. I think we took the world by surprise when the Chinese EV car took the market. I think there's some sort of perceptions over what Chinese can produce. I guess we have been so successful for 20, 30 years in making product for someone else. So I guess they are not prepared to accept the fact that we can actually create our own IP. We can actually have the technology ourselves. The last time an Asian movie that make it to global stage is probably 20 some years ago, the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Mm-hmm. But that was it. I mean, there was nothing else after that. So I think there's, no one expected, we can produce a movie as such, with such cutting edge graphics and animation. So I think, but perhaps this is a turnaround time for us. I mean, not that we try to compare, not saying that we are better or not, but I think at least for the first time now, people understand that, hey, we can actually have the know-how to produce a movie at the global level.
Yeah.
So to be at par with others too.
Absolutely. Let me follow up here with Bernard, because you mentioned Hidden Tiger, Crouching Dragon. Sorry if I mix the. It's a mouthful.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
But an interesting phenomenon is in the past, it's almost always producers or big stars from Hong Kong, or Macau, overseas China, who are making it, who are getting the recognition on behalf of China. But now we're seeing really mainland artists, mainland production companies, right? This one, the animation was done by 138 Chinese mainland companies. Bernard, do you see something there as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, why should the artist and producer from China any less than any Asian or other non-Asian of the artists? So I think this is as I said, this is great that people now start to recognize that, like everywhere else, China can produce good people, good artists or good technicians and so on and so on. So I think this is I would say, I'm pretty sure this is not going to be the last movie. There will be many more to come that we can showcase, that we can work together. I mean, again, we're not trying to compare who's better or not, but I think we should be respected at the same level as others too. So I think this is just, and by the way, it's not just for China too. I think it's good for Asia as a whole. Asian artists should be respected equally as the Western counterpart.
Professor Teng, your comments here, because you have been watching the movie industry all the time. In the past, it was Zhang Yimou, right? The Red Sorghum, that kind of theme. Right. And then, of course, the Hong Kong produced Jackie Chan and all of that. But now, Chinese-made anime sourced from traditional Chinese novels, culture. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say that historically, China has always been a leading filmmaker and country in East Asia, in the Far East, and let's say around the world since the 1920s. In fact, the first Chinese animated film was called The Iron Fan Princess, 铁扇公主, back in 1927. It exerted huge influence here in the Asian film and animated film community. The Japanese directors pick it up from 铁扇公主 and eventually developed their own animated film tradition. And so in this sense, I would say that China has a long tradition of making animated film and at the same time making feature-length film. And starting from 1984 with the fifth generation of Chen Kaige-'s Yellow Earth and making its fame in Hong Kong at the Hong Kong International Film Festival. And then Zhang Yimou's The Hero actually is the largest box office success ever since the Farewell My Concubine back in 1992. And so I would say that Chinese filmmakers right now are facing a major sort of a opportunity, and Jiaozi or Yang Yu managed to grasp that very opportunity and to come up with a new technology. This 3D technology is key to Jiaozi's success. I mean, we have been good in making feature length and conventional films, but now this is a new genre film, and that very genre film actually created the new path to success for young filmmakers from China. Back in the past, it's the older generations, the fifth generation, fourth generation. Now, this new generation, this tech-savvy generation who managed to bring Chinese film and animated film to the world stage.
Yeah. Well, the respected media outlet The Conversation said in one article that the film showcases China's ambition and ability to produce world-class content that competes with Western animation giants like Disney and Pixar. Professor Whyke, what is your comment to all of this?
Yeah, my thought here is we just have to look at the investment that is now being given on a domestic scale to animation. From 2017 onwards, there's been a shift towards this digital development. There's been several key policies which have basically tried to help the digital cultural industry in China. And actually the 13th five-year plan was basically there to support these measures. So we have a lot of digital infrastructure investment, national industry bases, research and development funding, and also the international cultural exchange support. So I think that is one of the big reasons why we're seeing now this massive success of Chinese animation industry. I think in 2023, the output value of the industry actually exceeded 300 billion. So this really does reflect that substantial growth in the technical capabilities and the production quality of Chinese animation. So I think that's why they're so able to do what I like to say is the contemporization of this Minzu Fenge, the national style. They can blend the traditional cultural storytelling, but also do that with the use of the technology they have. And I think that's really what is resonating both domestically and at home with the audiences. They can see this happening.
Yeah, Bernard, from a cultural perspective, what is your understanding of the kind of investment, top-down approach, top-down design, and the investment that's been given in fostering creativity and the technology needed to bring out that the creativity?
Well, I obviously think that the scales matter, and the fact that we have such a huge audience base, that helps a lot. And with that audience base, there's definitely enough motivation for all parties to work together. So I think that's sometimes I find that that's China's advantage. The fact that we have a large audience, a large demand, large consumer base, that will all help. Because it's very difficult to start from a low base and organically grow something. I mean, you can do that, but it will take some time. But I think what really makes China's success in the last 10, 20 years, the fact that we have that strong middle class, and that really helped to drive that huge demand for all sectors, and obviously in the film industry as well. So I think And I can only imagine this will continue to grow as the demand continue. But of course, the only one catch is that the quality. Because the fact that we have a large consumer base, but they also have lots of choices. So we got to make sure that we can sustain that quality to make better film, better products.
Professor Teng, your comment on the importance of quality. Definitely, China has a very big and emerging middle class, but they're very sophisticated, right? They're not just buying whatever you offers them. They calculate very much, and they sort the best. They want the best. But some people are saying, look, because China is a top-down approach, China is, socialism or communism, whatever you call it. So Chinese artists are not so creative or whatsoever. Somehow China's creativity may be stifled because of its political system. But somehow China is producing these top-notch creative content. Professor Teng, square that for us.
Well, you're quite right. I think you point us to this very top-down investment phenomenon. It is a phenomenon. It's never seen around the world. But that top-down investment phenomenon is truly helpful if it's profoundly sort of helpful and beneficial to filmmakers in this country. Now, the success of Ne Zha is not just the success of Jiaozi or Yang. It is the success of these tech companies being scattered around the country, but assisted by state investment with this very 13th National Development Plan, the money allocated to this very industry. These money actually helped to create a cluster of these tech companies in Sichuan, like in Chengdu, in Chongqing, in Hangzhou, in Suzhou, and in Zhejiang. I mean, these companies are the huge industrial base to create this very new phenomenon. And so I would say that this is China's advantage that we should make full use of. Unlike that in the United States, everything is private. Private investors invest in this, in that. But China is not. China is different. China has a private sector, and in Jiaozi actually worked with a private sector company, the Enlight, headed by Wang Changti, and a very visionary business person, as well as Jiaozi himself, who started his own studios. 2 studios under his control are involved in this project. And so in this sense, I think it is a collaboration of the private and also the state organized investment that contributes to the success of Jiaozi's Ne Zha. And I think this will continue to sustain, this method of development will continue to sustain the Chinese film industry, especially animated film industry, which remained a very niche market. It's a very small market with a very small audience. And so in this sense, it needs the kind of state investment as well as visionary private investors.
It used to be animation film, used to be only for children, but now we're all going to cinemas watching animated.
Right. Yes.
And I don't mind it. I enjoyed it. But Professor Whyke, what is your comment? Because you were nodding right a lot when Professor Teng was talking about the kind of very different approach towards fostering. How big do you think is the potential that can be unleashed under this kind of encouragement, under this kind of platform and investment and mix of top-down and bottom-up approach?
Yeah, as I said, I think the massive amount of state funding that's going into this, plus the fact that now we have this independent creators or the emergence of independent creators actually in the 2010s that really started to bring these fresh artistic perspectives. And I really think that is what is leading now to this new golden era for Chinese animation. It's able to mix commercial success and a technological advancement. And I think the other reason is, if we go back in history to the 1960s, 70s and 80s, at that point in time, the state did have a massive influence on the type of themes that animation could portray. But now, again, with this, advancement in technology, independent creator, and the influence they have, I think they have a little bit more freedom over what they can do with the animation, with the themes as well, the modern themes that they want to show. So definitely that is helping, I think, in the success of Chinese animation today.
Yeah, Bernard, let's step aside a little bit. Just now you mentioned a very important thing, very important point. This is not just a Chinese thing. It's not that Chinese movies will take over the world. Tell us a bit more about that. Exactly what you mean by that, and what do you think is going to happen in terms of cultural scene, the diversity, you know, not Michael Jackson sweeping the world anymore, but what's going to happen?
Well, first of all, I think politically, people try to demonize China in every aspect. So, China is going to take over this, take over that. I think we should all put that aside and thinking about what is actually good for the consumers, what's good for the audience, and for the industries. And the fact that maybe just now the point you mentioned about the top-down approach, that actually helped because it helps to create this industry in a more efficient way. But then it should not just be us. I think we live in a global world, and we should want the best talent, and the best talent come from everywhere. So I think, you know, we may be leading the way, but we should also be inclusive, bringing the best people around the region in Asia, or perhaps not even Asia, the world, and to try to create better products, and for the global audience. So it should not be just, you know, this is just a Chinese thing. It's beyond a Chinese thing. But of course, our very unique model can actually help to create something much quicker and much more efficiently. But then we should be inclusive and bring the best talent to work together.
Yeah, well, it's in my eyes the most significant thing is the monopoly of Hollywood movies on the global box office scene. But finally, Professor Teng, I give you 1 minute. Is this going to inspire more people to visit China after the, Wukong, the Black Myth, after the Xiaohongshu fever?
Well, absolutely. I was talking to my African friends the other day, and they are so very excited about this very China trip because of the film, because of these Asian costume history film, but also this animated film with Ne Zha and also Black Wukong. I mean, they were actually so very much. They were even pointing to Shanxi province, not just the Great Wall, not just the Tiananmen Square. Now they are trying to go to these small places. These places often ignored by tourists, but then with the depth of culture, it's all about the culture that are trying to dig deeper into. And so my hope is that come to China, experience the culture through the window of film.
Yeah. Well, certainly it has spurred a lot of Chinese to go and visit these forgotten corners.
Yes.
I know there's a competition by different parts of China to claim they're more relevant to the stories come to us for tourism. Anyway, whatever happens, I hope we can deserve people's expectation when they come to see China for themselves after watching the film. We have to leave it there. Many thanks to Thomas William Whyke, Assistant Professor at the University of Nottingham, Ningbo, Bernard Chen, former member of the Executive Council of Hong Kong, and Teng Jimeng, Professor of Chinese Film of CET program at Capital Normal University. We have to leave it there. Thank you so much. With that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and X using the handle Liu Xin in Beijing. On behalf of the whole team, thank you for watching. You've got the point.